We don't hear Steve.
Okay, you don't hear Steve. Hold on. They don't hear you.
How about now?
Can we hear Steve now?
Yeah.
Test 1, 2, 3.
Okay, very good. Go ahead, Steve.
All right. Again, thank you for coming. This is a Steve Squared production. Steve, WA1EYF, was conned into writing this for me because I wanted him to learn it as best he could, as quickly as he could. And the best way to learn something is to actually do it or teach it. Next slide. What? Oh, here we go. What are power poles? Go ahead. It's a standard for interchangeability because of the way they're designed. They're easy to connect because when you assemble them, they only go together one way if they're assembled properly. And we'll get into that. Go ahead. They're solid connections. And they come apart very easily. Okay, so they come in sizes, various sizes. Here are the big boys. There are 3 here. These shells will accommodate a 15, a 30, or a 45 amp insert. And the inserts are based entirely on use. It is the ARRI standard for power. Okay. So in the past, I'm not going to do this. In the past, what you see on the left is essentially a cigarette lighter plug. One of these. The other one looks more like a microphone connector, but it does do power for the older radios. Before my time, for sure, but as far as being in the hobby, but yes. Next slide. So these different sized ones in the picture here are the 75 amp connectors. They assemble just like the others. Actually, I'm not going to push that all the way on because we'll have a hell of a time getting it back off. Now, if you take a look at what I've put together, you'll notice that I've put both of them together the same way. That is paramount. Because if the orientation is correct, your connections will never fail. You can interchange within the same size easily. Here's a black and a red, and a black and a red. And you'll notice that they only go together one way. Red to red, black to black. Regardless of the size of the insert that's in place. We do have multiple colors. Blue, pink. Anybody want to take a guess at how many colors there are overall? And why? Way too high. A little too low. There are 10 colors. Here in electronics, what are 10 colors? What 10 colors are we most commonly used in our hobby? Give me 3 of them. Out loud, anybody.
Green, red, black.
Okay.
White.
Black, brown, red, orange, yellow, violet, blue, white.
The resistor color codes.
There you go. These are similar to that, to the extent they could make that. Okay. Next one. All right. So here we actually see a power pole connection. Black wire coming out of the black, red wire coming out of the red. The red is on the right. You need to see that in those connectors, right? Red is on right. Well, if I take, there you go. I've put them together in such a way that when you look at them from that point of view, when I show them to you, that thing's sticking its tongue out at you, but not at me. And red is on right for me. Okay. Doesn't matter whether we have the big ones or the small ones. Okay, well, here's the case where I have a pink and a yellow. What do I do with that? It depends. There's no standard. No standard at all. Black and red for 12-volt circuits, 12-volt circuits, up to 45 amps in this scenario, and up to 75 amps in this scenario is the standard for Aries. Plug and play into any 12-volt power supply. Why do I say 12? Well, 12 volts car battery, a lot of things are based on 12-volt systems. 12-volt negative ground, also positive, but we're going to talk about negative ground. Not too many cars have 24-volt systems. Some military vehicles may have 24, some may have 48, but that doesn't work for us because how do you tell how much voltage is on one of these things without measuring it? You can't tell by color, right? So the specifications for Aries is 12 volts, 13.8 plus or minus 15%. Next slide. Okay, so I don't know if you can see me. If you look at this picture, you'll see two connectors, one red, one black, sticking their tongues out at you. So the person who would be holding this is actually looking on at red on right, black on left. So red on right, that's all you got to remember. You might be able to see it. I hope you can. There's a little piece of metal inside there. That's what these are. These are the pins. Pass these back there. And one back there. The diameter of the hole inside that metal connector dictates the wire size and therefore the current. Let me give you another one. Take a look at that one and that one. Part of it is similar, part of it is different. What is similar? The blade. The blade is the same, regardless if it's 15 amp, 30 amp, or 45 amp. What is different? The diameter of the hole for the wire it accepts. 15 amp, 30 amp, 45 amp. Next slide. Most of you have probably seen these go boxes. They are based entirely on power poles. If you look at this picture, on the bottom left is the power supply. And you'll see that there are power poles in that picture on the power supply directly. You don't see it being used there, but it can be. What you don't see is that on the back of that power supply are ring terminals. What if the power supply doesn't have power poles on it? Then what do you do? So there's a 7,000 in there. You can't actually see it because right behind that piece of coax with the red connector is the voltage controller. That goes from the power supply to the controller, to the battery, and to the load. And we're going to go through some of that in the demonstration. This beast weighs 42 pounds. This beast is the other one, and it weighs about 35 pounds. What's the difference? Well, there's more hardware in here. It's still power poles. It's all 12 volts. It's still power poles. Next slide. Okay, this is from the Anderson website. Here's a better indication of the size of the various power poles that are available. How many of you have run a golf cart? Anybody run a golf cart? What's the battery connection? Power pole. Yeah. It's not one of these. It's closer to this, but instead of in two pieces, it's one solid connect. God damn it. There you go. That's why I don't push them all the way on. They're usually gray. They can be any color, but they're usually gray. They're always together, and they're rounded at the edges. Golf carts are famous for that. So here you have not only different sizes, but you have different colors. And there are more than 10, but there are 10 common colors. When you put these things together and you pull them apart, they're self-cleaning. Connectors always oxidize over time, and power poles are no exception. But if you plug them in and you unplug them a few times, then they are self-cleaning. Problem goes away. That is one of the drawbacks to power poles. Anybody want to take a guess at what another one might be? Here's a connection, typical connection. They're not waterproof. That's a problem sometimes. However, pretty sure that with one of these radios, especially the one on the previous slide, at 22 amps, you don't want to be in the rain with it. You don't care. You just don't want to be there. Next slide. PowerWorks has an incredible selection of parts. Here's one of the 75 amp cables, pre-made. Better than me. I can do it, but they're much better at it. West Mountain, HRO has them. Amazon, DX Engineering. If you're going to buy stuff, shop around. Prices are all over the map. While the Anderson Power Group suggests prices, they don't hold to them.
Early on,
Next page. Okay, so in this picture on the screen
backstage, there was nothing.
is this bag.
Just bringing its energy and her presence
In that bag, you get a selection of power poles.
in the back premiere night with a smile on her face that she was a super fan of this game. I said I wanted to play with other fans who understand, who aren't going to be intimidated when I can run strategies and numbers.
Series of
So I really felt like I found that in Brittany.
the pins, the shells. As a group like this, there are clips to keep them together like this. There's also the crimper. This is a crimper specifically designed for power poles. It's called a tri-crimp. Can you do it with regular pliers? Absolutely. Will you probably crush the connector? Well, you will for the first dozen or so times. After that, you'll either figure it out or you'll spend the 40 whatever dollars and buy one of these and move on, because this is pretty much foolproof. Okay, so the bag, the assortment, and the crimp tool. I have added considerably to the assortment. I've added the color ones in mine. I've added some boots that literally go around the connectors so that you don't see the ugly wire as it connects. So it looks like that. That's all. You just snip off the end before you insert. The crimp tool is the most important piece here, by far. Now, practical application. Okay, so this is where the camera really becomes important. When you buy a radio, This one's a ICOM 2820. You get the connector, you get fuses, and typically you get bare ends. I was feeling energetic one day and put ring terminals on it because my power supply has ring terminals on it. Not very universal. If you need my power supply, you might need this too, instead of your stuff. So here's my power supply. And it has ring terminals on the back. However, I have added a fused power pole connector. This one is 40 amps. The connectors inside are rated at 45 amps. So now I can plug this into a radio and not worry about it. All I need to be able to go from power pole to the OEM-T. Okay, where are you, OEM-T? In case you haven't guessed, I've got quite a number of adapters. I can make them or you can buy them. So here's a power pole to an OMT. All right, this is sufficient current-wise to supply what this radio needs. Right, the gauge of wire is more than sufficient. What is this wire? Okay, but do you know what the wire itself is called? Okay, let's do it from a different point of view. No? Bingo. It's just zip cord. This is zip cord. Which one do you put a black connector on, and which one do you put the white connector on? If I was to cut off the ends, I won't because I actually need this, but if I was to cut off the ends, and I'm going to give this to Bob. Bob, how do I know which one is which without measuring it?
The neutral on the ground has ridges along the.
Bingo. It's just zip cord. And if you put your hand on this, yes, you got it. Thank you. If you put your hand on this on one side, it's smooth. And on the other side, there are little ribs. If you got good eyesight, you can see the ribs. All zip cord is like that. Doesn't matter whether it's brown, black, clear, or some other color. So, do you need to use the red and black? No. Is it much easier? Oh, hell yes. All right, but it's just zip cord. This will tell you how old this is, but this is 18 gauge zip cord. Not necessarily. 18 gauge will run power, but it's Archer. I mean, if you look at the label, it's even faded. It's been in my basement long time. No, I actually use this stuff. So yeah. All right. So you can use that for low current applications. All right. In fact, it would probably work just fine for this. So if we take this and we plug this into here, we plug this into here, because they are genderless, they only go together one way. We turn this bad boy on. That should pop on, should be green. Assuming it's on. No, it's an amber. Okay, so green or amber. All right. Well, in the field, you might not have AC. You might have DC, assuming the battery is charged. Okay, so I just converted just like that. What was the delay? 2, 3 seconds. I could do it a little faster maybe, but 2 or 3 seconds. It is pretty universal. That's why it's the area standard. Again, it's not waterproof. And you do periodically have to unplug them and plug them back in again a few times. All right, so now I've got a power supply or a battery. Well, that's kind of nice. This is an AGM, so that's lead and acid in a glass mat. Wouldn't it be nice if I could switch back and forth at will? Well, this is a Samlex battery backup module. So if you look at it, it's got an input, a battery, and a load. The input is the power supply. It truly is only an input. The load is truly only an output. What's the battery? It's both. This will allow that power supply to charge that battery. The only thing it's missing is a couple of cables coming out with power poles on the end. So I could plug this in to this system or anybody else's system and make it just work. The downsides to this module is it will only handle the lead acid type batteries. As time marches on, we are going away from lead acid. What are we going towards? Lithium iron phosphate. Okay, where are they? Which one had it? Oops, that's not it. Anybody seen one of these? This is an Epic power gate. It's just one of many out there that do this kind of thing. And what it is it does the same thing that this does, except it's programmable. You tell it what the battery chemistry is, and it does the right thing. So while this is a lead acid, and it has a specific profile for charging, that profile will not work on a lithium iron phosphate. This will take care of that. There are others, but this is the one I use. So this has that same battery connection. An input, they actually call power supply. I call it power source because it's going to have to be a supply. There's an output just like the other one. There's also a solar panel input. It is limited to 30 volts. That's why I wanted you to bring your solar panel, because I was going to plug it in. Otherwise, I had to bring my own, and I didn't. Notice that this is power poles. So literally, I can take this out of the circuit, plug this in directly. It's a reoccurring theme here. The theme is it's more universal. It's why it's the area standard. I can make this system work like that. So if Howard has one of these and it fails, I can program this and say, oh, you need to behave like this. Plug this into a system. He's up and running. And along the way, he gets the solar panel input as well. The size of the profiles. It's about 8 years difference in technology. That's about all there is. This one, you can jumper it to the battery chemistry, or you can pop this little top, plug in a USB cable and program it. This AGM or lead acid type, that's it. It's very functional, gets a little warm, not so much. So we've done battery to radio, we've done power supply to radio. How about we put a distribution panel in? Why not? So the battery or the power supply, doesn't matter which, we'll take the power supply. We'll plug it into the 40 amp source. And we have 4 loads. They range from 25 to 10 to 5 to 1 amp. Little green light comes on. I don't know if you can see it to tell you that it's powered. That's all. Okay. And these are fused. So that means the connection from the radio to here does not require fuses. So this is going to be a 15 or a 20 amp. The book calls for 20, but the greatest load is around 13. So we're going to plug it into here. And on it comes. Look how quick that was. I'm not fussing with wires. I'm not fussing with connectors. Right? Once it's already got the connector on it, it's plug and play. I'm not bending wire around the round terminal. I'm not using wire ties or the wire lugs. I'm not doing any of that stuff. This is about as clean as it gets. Okay? Yes.
Explain the lone fuse feature that the West Mountain unit has.
Well, some of them have it. I believe this one does because it's a later model. There's a little LED inside there. If a fuse blows, you see the light up. It is, especially in a certain mobile EOC in the dark. Why is this not working? What the hell's going on? Oh, shit. Okay, so I want to take a look at some more practical applications. Let's see. We all have cell phones of one form or another. Not that one. Where did it go? Find it. Ooh, I know it's here. What's that? That I left in the Jeep. Okay, so I don't see it. That doesn't matter. So cell phones basically are USB powered devices, right? iPhones probably use the greatest amount of current, up to 2.4 amps. This little gizmo is power pole at one end, USB at the other, rated for 3 amps. So as long as I plug it into a circuit that can accommodate the 3 amps, I think 5 ought to cover it, I can charge my cell phone. More importantly, or maybe equally as important, depending upon your point of view and time frame, this laptop is USB powered. So now it's powered up. You begin to see how universal and practical this technology is. On this particular unit, they have 2 USB ports. They are not fused. There are 2 versions of this module. One has fuses, the other one doesn't. couple of differences. The one that is fused is only a 1 amp fuse. That means half an amp per circuit. Can't really power a lot. Actually, I prefer that unit because I can literally disconnect them and not use them because they tend to be RF noisy. That's a problem for us, for HF. These tend to be RF quiet. You paid for it, but they're RF quiet in most cases. I do have one that reads low voltage, and I found it out purely by accident. Where is the gizmo? What's that?
That cord is something you need to buy, not me.
This one right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to buy this. This is a, what do they call this? This is the USB Buddy from PowerWorks because it's going to convert 12 volts to 5. Okay? Anybody recognize what this is? Raspberry Pi. And what does it work on? 5 volts. Here's an on-off switch. And I just need the appropriate USB cable. Oh, it's right in front of me. Here it is. So here's a USB cable. And if you actually look at my executive Go box, the mobile EOC, I use many of these. What this cable is it's a USB connector to the Apple Lightning connector, a micro USB, and then the USB 3. But it is the C actually. Yeah. So essentially, I can get double duty out of this, providing I don't exceed the current rating. So here it is. And I can charge my phone. Whenever. So that's a possibility. It can also run this gizmo by simply plugging it in. It's not that connector, it's this connector. Simply by turning it on, assuming I have the right connector.
What do you do with the pie?
Well, we'll talk about that later. Okay. All right. So what else? Well, you're in the field and you need some technology to work for you. Well, let's say you've got a radio that needs to be charged. This one will take anything from 9 to 16 volts. So I can either charge it on the side where are you? Here somewhere. Too many parts. You ever thought you'd hear me say too many parts? Is that it? No. That's it. Okay, so here's the power supply that comes with this radio. All I gotta do is be able to see the connector. Plug it in. Now I could plug it into one of those, plug it in through AC, or where did you go? Too many connectors. That's not it. And we'll do this one. 9 to 16 for charging. Yes, most of the Yaesus are. Right, I deliberately picked Yaesu. All right, so you can either plug it into the side if I could find the cable. Oh, here it is. And you'll happen to notice that I have put 15 amp power poles on them. Here's the connector. So I don't need a lot of current. So it's telling me I have 11.7 volts. These run around 7.4 volts. I don't know what the power supply is currently set to, but that's charging. Well, okay, I'm in a hurry. New plan. Here we go. So here's a power pole. All I did was put a coax. I bought it with the coaxial connector on it, put the power poles on it. Coaxial connector in the back of this guy. Put that in. I want the coaxial connector. The center pin is always positive. In Yezu, anyway. In Yezu.
No matter what.
In Yezu. Okay, you can't see, oh, maybe you can see it. There's a blinking light here that's charging it. This is the fast charger. What's the difference? When I plugged it into the side of the radio, the control was a component of the radio. So it doesn't charge very fast. Well, now the control is this box and it charges for those ports. Again, see how powerful the technology is when you kind of think outside the box. I'm clearly not the first person to do that. But from one source, whether it be a power supply or a battery, whatever the technology is that I want to use, I have all kinds of possibilities. Let's try something
So
else.
far, it's all either 12 or 5 volts. Right? That's all we've seen so far is either 12.
Excellent. That's where I'm going next. Your eyesight's pretty good, right? Tell me what that says.
It says 3, 4.5, 5, 6, 7.5, 9, and 12
Yeah,
with positive inside.
correct. Center,
DC adapter.
correct.
DC adapter.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, but you'll notice that this requires what?
Well,
A cigarette lighter. Well, it just so happens I happen to have a cigarette lighter with power poles on it. It is currently set to 5 volts. If I read that right, God, I hope I did, because I'm going to blow something up if I didn't. I don't know what the current rating is, so we're going to move this over and put that in. So now I've got 5 volts. Well, it turns out that new club that's been created, Merrimack Valley Amateur Radio Association, deals with 5 gigahertz networks and 2.4. This is all over RF. This is one of the tunnel routers we use to actually look and control it. I plug this in at home. I plug it into the network backbone and I can hop around the entire network. It runs on 5 volts, not 12, not 6, 5. So here's the AC plug for it. Here's the DC plug for it. You'll see the lights coming on now. Okay, so I just need to plug this into an internet, right? And I'm up and running. Just so happens I know it's here. There are so many bits and pieces. I left it in the car. Don't see it. Yeah, it might be in the car. Oh, well. I have a cradle point. I usually carry it with me. The cradle point is an internet connection into a cell tower. So literally, I can plug this in, or I could plug this in because this one actually uses 12 volts. Take it off its AC adapter, plug it into the 12-volt side, and here's my router. This is a wireless access point.
How do you get the internet signal to that? Or phone signal?
Through the cradle point, which apparently is still in the car.
Is it like a box?
It's a little box with 3 antennas on it. Actually, I know the antennas are here because I put them in the container separately. Where the hell did it go? It's probably still there. Let me just take one more peek. Yeah, must still be in the car. Oh, no, here it is. Okay, so this might actually work in here. I don't know yet. I've never tried it. So if I put this on, and I put this on, these are the antennas for connection to the cell towers. This is the antenna to create a wireless access point. Now this little beast uses a very specialized cable because Cradle Point can do things like that. Is that? Oh, it's definitely in here. There's just, I mean, everything's black and red. So, except that one, that's all black. But in the end, they all kind of get lost. But it's got a very specialized connector on it because Cradle Point requires a very specialized connector for polarity. And they've got other signals on it as well. I don't see it. So I've got one that's an AC one. That's an AC wall wart to the DC. And then I've got the DC one, which I wired for the camper. All right, we're going to skip that for the moment. So let's see how bad things really are here. This little gizmo measures in real time voltage, current, power. You have to put it in line. I want to take the whole thing. So there's a load side. I just got to be able to read it. Okay. Which one's which? That's the load. Okay. So that's the source. You know, I'm not even thinking about this. I just simply plug it in, right? So this is running 12.05 volts, 0.29 to 35 amps, 3.1 to 4.1 watts. It's probably this guy. Oh, actually, it could be this too. So at any point in time, because of this technology, I simply plug things in or plug things out. That's the beauty of the technology.
So what's running on it now?
Well, let's see.
You got your laptop running on it.
My laptop is running it. My cell phone is running.
Charging the HT.
I'm
cell?
charging the HT. And what's this one doing? Nothing. I do. It's not here because it doesn't need to be here. The ICOM series of radios, especially those that use FETs, incredibly voltage sensitive. So I do have a device in the camper. It's underneath the bed. You can switch it in manually, or you can switch it in based on RF signal detection to boost the voltage to 14.1 volts. I haven't needed it yet. I've been very fortunate. They're a little pricey. They're like $300 and something. So it made sense to put it in the camper. However, it is easily removed from the camper into the Go box. By the way, it has power poles on the in and the out. That's built in. I didn't do that. So it's well thought out. The technology is well thought out. Here's something might interest you. Anybody recognize these connectors? They're called ATC connectors. This is one of the technologies that solar panels use. So this is one of the mounts that goes in my camper to power the solar array. So the solar panel comes down, or in this case, it's actually outside, comes out, comes into here, plugs into, as it turns out, one of these. Right? There are several of them. Do I have more than one here? I don't see it. So I have two of these in the camper. They plug into these. I have one load, and I actually have a third one that's on the roof. So everything plugs into here, all the solar panels. And that goes to a controller that monitors and manages the battery as it relates to the power from the solar panel. Here's something you might be interested in. We were talking earlier about the different size connectors. Well, along with the bigger connectors come the bigger fuses. These are 75 amp fuses. That's an 8-gauge wire.
Those fuses like auto fuses, so you just pull them out and stick a new one in?
Turns out when I was looking for these originally, it was cheaper to buy that assembly than it was to buy the damn fuses. So I bought the damn fuse, bought the whole thing.
You came with the fuses in it?
It did. They're huge.
This I said a few. It says 40.
It says 40, they're actually 75s. So my camper has this setup in it.
We talk about the crimping.
We'll get there. That's next.
Oh, okay.
See, this generates the interest. I have one more thing. A set of universal adapters that allow me to, because, you look at some of this stuff and most of them use one type of coaxial connector for power, but not everybody does. What are there? There's 5, there's 6 coaxial adapters.
Get that.
Amazon, my buddy.
And the coax goes into a
So
device, but on the back of the coax, it takes the power pole.
No, that's the conversion.
Adapter.
Those are adapters. This gizmo right here, that's powering this, that goes through the, what they call a SOC PP, socket to power pole, has a variety of adapters you can put on it. And there they are. And they are polarized so that you always get negative and positive. All right, so there's a whole lot more here, but I think we've beaten it to death. Oh, I did have one more. Anybody recognize this? Battery charger. This is a Maha battery charger. These things are awesome. They're very, very intelligent. AC circuit. Guess what? Want to guess at what voltage it actually runs on? 12 volts. It's a coaxial connector, DC. Coaxial connector. Plug it in. Got one of these in camper. I always have fresh batteries. Okay, so the connectors. Let's do something. Let's grab some wire. Okay, so in addition to the crimpers, which I did not bring my diagonal cutters. Shame on me. That's all right. Okay, so I told you earlier that there are 3 types of internal connectors. There's the 15, the 30, and the 45. And the only difference is the diameter at the other end of the blade. That's to accommodate the size of the wire, nothing more. So equally important to the crimpers is a good wire stripper, because it needs to be clean. Otherwise, you're wasting your time and your money. So Jim Jenkins actually told me about these. And all I do, I don't know if you can get this. Let's try it. So there are 3 settings here, a 15, a 30, and a 45. This is a 45 amp connector. Because of the size of the wire I happen to choose. All I'm going to do is insert it into the 45 amp. Let's do that. And I'm going to push down. And that's as much as it takes to do this. It's not rocket science. I'll do the other one. Again, insert it into the appropriate size space. I usually push it down against something because there's an awful lot of power required. Ooh, I bent that. And away we go. So with that,
Steve,
yes,
now, or explain how you determine where the position of the blade is as it goes on the wire, so you come out left and right.
doesn't matter because you can spin it any way you want.
Well,
You'd like it to be red on right, black on left.
right.
Okay, and I didn't go that far. I just did it.
Tongue should be down, right? Blade-
Tongue should be down. That's correct. It's like a spoon. So think of it as a spoon being turned upside down. So there's the connection. It's that fast. However, again, a good wire stripper is most important. Because if you screw up these wires, a couple of things will happen. 1, you'll probably wind up doing it again. Or 2, which is even worse, you'll break some of the wire and you won't see it. I do not suggest spinning the wire tighter. Keep it straight, insert it. Because if it's straight and inserted, you can see if you break something really quickly. If you spin it, you're going to bury it. You may not see it.
How does it clasp? Like,
To crimp.
no, when the tongue goes in.
Oh,
to the plastic,
There's a catch inside there. And it's more like this.
Another piece of metal.
It's another, yes. There's a piece of metal in, you should have it there. Look on the big one. Do you have the bigger ones?
yeah, I got this one.
No. Look at that one.
That-
Yeah, there should be a piece of metal inside there.
Yeah, the front end there is.
Right. So it inserts in the back and the back clips into the front. That's why there's the spoon and it's upside down because it requires to be upside down when you insert it. Click and pull. All right. Yeah. Because they are difficult to remove, but there are removal tools and there's an art to it. Okay, Bob? It's not a science, it's an art, although it's supposed to be a science.
Just a couple of comments. One is, don't solder these because it makes the wires stiff and more likely to break off.
They're brittle. In fact, they tell you don't do it.
The other one is, I don't like those little pins because the consequence of one falling out into your radio isn't good. So
They won't fall.
I super glue.
Okay. Well, you can get these. This set is actually helical welded. I don't really trust them. They come together by them as a package, but I've broken the welds. However, there are 2 types of pins. Actually, there's 3 types of pins. One type of pin keeps these together. The problem with that is if you need to connect 2 of these, oops, come on. You can't fasten them because there's another set of clips that keep the cables together. So you can't pull them out. But if you put the pins to secure the connectors, you cannot connect adjacent cables because they occupy the same space. All right.
We also wrap those in rescue tape, to be waterproof.
Well, they may be waterproof. They won't guarantee it. I use the boots, but they're not guaranteed. Now you can epoxy the crap out of them, but you may not be able to get them apart later on. Okay. So, I mean, the actual connection is not that difficult. It does take time to master it. You know, half a dozen tries and you'll probably get it. The biggest problem, the hardest part of this is getting the right length of exposed wire. Because if you put too much, it comes out beyond the connector. That's not so good. Too little, it doesn't stay. And then when you do the pull test, it pops right out. Okay? It's experience, that's all. Now, the connector itself will tell you, and here's a better one to show you. This is the 45 amp. 45 amp, the wires for the 45 are so big, so you're going to fold it over. See it? Here. It's easier when you see it on the board. They literally fold over. Okay? And that's the right way. You want to hold it like this. Tongue down, wire goes in, the whole assembly goes into the pliers, into the crimp tool.
On the barrel type, okay, for years we had, what we're call the amp lugs with the same kind of barrel. You put the wire in and you crimped it.
Yep.
Will the crimpers that we used for that work on this?
No,
They won't.
no, they will not. This is a special crimp.
Okay.
There are 3 dies inside this. And actually, for those who are interested, this is the 45 amp. And it's a beast. Why? Well, you're using these big ass connectors on 8-gauge wire. Now, so there are those of us who have problems with doing some of those. So we get these adapters to go from the big boys to the regular size. These are ridiculously overpriced, by the way. Ridiculous. However, safety is paramount. This is all PowerWorks. I'm only using PowerWorks, and I only use it because I know it works for me. I've had good experience. I've never had a problem with the PowerWorks equipment. I don't mind paying the cost because it has to work. We're in an event someplace and this fails, that's a disaster. However, as you can see, I have some flexibility. If my stuff fails and there's another radio around, I'm going to plug into it. I'm going to steal it, borrow it, or you're going to borrow mine or whatever. You're going to take whatever component parts you need to make yours work, or I'm going to do the same thing. I can mix and match at will, right? And if there's any questions, it boils down to a connector. Pull on the connector. Pulls apart, you screwed up. It doesn't pull apart, it's not the connector, it's probably a fuse, right? Could be the other end. It could be the coaxial connector. Well, I've got plenty of extra cable, so I'm not worried about it.
PowerX has an excellent 3-page with pictures, how to do this on their website.
Yep, they do. And you'll see that one of the things they don't talk about on that, but they do talk about in other discussions, don't solder. Solder makes it brittle. Thank you. Don't solder because it's brittle. Brittle fails every single time. When does it fail? When you need it the most. Don't do that to yourself. Okay. I think we're done unless we want to get into some major stuff you want to come up and play.
Is PowerWorks just a distributor and Anderson's the manufacturer?
Anderson's the manufacturer of the Anderson power pole. PowerWorks makes assemblies that make use of the Anderson power pole. This, what's that?
PowerX power supply is all.
It is. I think we can cut this now.